I'm Paul Van Squike, your Taekwondo guide, and this is Topic Tuesday. And I'm back. Yes, I'm back. Hack. Yes, I'm back. And it's good to see you guys again. If you didn't hear, I had a sweet, sweet, sweet little baby boy. I did not myself give birth to this little baby boy. It was my wife who gave birth, and I'll tell you what, this is my first child, and nothing can prepare you for the trauma that a woman undergoes to give birth to a sweet, sweet, sweet little baby. So thank you, mothers of the world, for enduring the trauma that allows the world to continue on. Now, let's get into our topics. But first, if you're new around here, the concept is simple. People leave me topics all about Taekwondo, questions all about Taekwondo, and we discuss them. And it's just me talking to a camera, so I always recommend you put your headphones in and you get your chores done while you listen. Okay, now, the first topic. From Owen Cooper, 1360. I'm a medium-build male, and at my sparring class, there are a lot of 13 to 16-year-old boys, some of them very skinny. How can I be a good sparring partner for them? I worry about hurting them, so I usually pull the speed and power of my kicks, and then it's not so realistic for testing their defense. Sometimes I do try to keep a reasonable speed, but then if I make contact, it seems like it hurts. I don't want them to have a bad time, but I also don't want them to train into bad habits. By the way, we don't usually do head kicks in class, so I'm talking about chest guard hits only. This is a really good question, and no doubt if you are an adult in Taekwondo, you've experienced something like this. If you spar, you're going to end up sparring with teenagers. So if you have a size advantage and a power advantage, you're right, you really don't want to use that to your advantage for a couple of reasons. Number one, if you are frequently injuring your partners, they have a bad time, and when they're having a bad time, they're not really going to be able to learn much of anything, and they're not going to want to spar with you anymore, and they might quit, right? So we don't want them to have a bad time, but yes, at the same time, we need them to learn and grow with us. We both want to learn and grow when we spar. That's the objective, right? We're both going to gain something from this. Mutual benefits. So, how can you both mutually improve during a sparring match if there's a disparity in size and power? Well, number one, I would encourage you to try your best not to change the speed of your techniques. Now, you might be thinking speed equals power, right? Mass times acceleration is power. But follow-through matters a lot. So if I, as quickly as possible, just try to hit the surface of someone's chest guard, maybe penetrating only an inch or so, that's a different sensation from trying to drive my leg through them and kick them into the wall, right? These are two very different feelings on the receiving end. One is not necessarily faster than the other. You can be fast while limiting your follow-through. But remember that not every technique has to be fast in sparring. It's a strange dynamic. It is all about developing a comfort, a awareness, an intuitiveness of the timing and spacing and the interplay between you and your opponent. So sometimes, this may sound strange, but sometimes a slow technique might be better than a fast technique. It all depends on the interplay. And the interplay is something that you want to develop a sense of reading, again, intuitively. And you can only do that through regular sparring and sort of constraints-led sparring drills. So sometimes you might score with a slower technique rather than a faster technique. You might change the rhythm in ways that dictate a different kind of technique rather than simply an explosive, snappy, quick, speedy technique, right? That being said, if you pull the follow-through, you should be able to move quickly without injuring your opponent, especially to the body. If you miscalculate, you're still not going to break the person. If you snap a leg out to the head and you think the student is moving away from it, they just take a flick, right? If they move away from it, you're snapping it though. Maybe they move toward you a little bit. Now you've just messed someone up real good. I just watched not too long ago a student get a concussion from someone who threw a snappy kick toward their head and they moved into it in a way that wasn't expected. It was bad. We've only had, I think that was only the third concussion that I've had in nearly 16 years of running this operation. It's really a rare event considering that we're regularly sparring here. But it happened because someone was throwing with that kind of snappiness to the head. So when you throw to the head, which you're not talking about here, but when you do, you want to throw in a way that accounts for their ability to potentially miscalculate and move into your kick. In fact, the other concussion, 2 of 3 that occurred here, was the same thing. Someone thought the student was going to move away, and instead they moved into the kick, and then you get that combination of forces. So anyway, you want to, when throwing to the head, account for the likelihood that they'll misgauge the spacing of the situation. The body, you can kick quickly without follow-through, and you should be okay. And I'll tell you, from the standpoint of developing your own sparring intuition, if you're sparring with someone who's not the same size as you, who can't generate the same power that you can, you're going to grow more if you switch on a more technical approach to sparring that person. So kind of bringing yourself into their zone so that you're not using those size advantages to dominate the situation. Rather, you're trying to use timing, spacing, and technique itself to score your points. So you're basically fighting within their realm so that you too can grow from the situation. Sparring is not necessarily about throwing the hardest kick. Okay, if you can hit a heavy bag with power, if you can hit a paddle with power, you know how to hit hard. Okay, hitting something hard really isn't super difficult. In fact, a lot of people can come in off the street and hit something pretty hard without much of any training. The hard part is the intuitiveness that comes from understanding spacing and timing within the context of sparring that's going to better serve you in terms of your sparring ability. You want that understanding, you want that intuition, and you can develop it without using any power. You can develop that technical awareness. So, if you want to get better, that's going to be the best approach for you and for your partner. Generally speaking, the thing somebody doesn't like when they're sparring with you is feeling overwhelmed. When they're so overwhelmed that they can't learn, it's not a good experience for them, and that's what we want to avoid. So try to spar in a way where they're not overwhelmed and where you're working on building your technical abilities. One thing you can do too, if they're inferior to you, is work on the stuff you're not very good at. That's the perfect time to build your skills that aren't your high-level skills. All right, from Cindy Pearson, 6324. Do you feel the techniques in a poomsae are representative of only one specific combative movement, or can it be interpreted in multiple ways? This is probably a topic you have already discussed. Yeah, it's a good question. I think we have kind of been down this road a few times, but it's always an interesting question. First, I would note that Daniel Moreno from Practical Tang Sudo has a lot of good content on this very subject. If you're interested in this material, check out Daniel Moreno. Okay, my take on it. First, it depends on who you ask. If you pick up certain textbooks, they would imply to you that there is a very specific interpretation for each movement, and that's probably the only one out there. In fact, a lot of times it's in the name of the movement. Agulmaki, high block. Doesn't leave a whole lot of room for imagination there. They called it a high block, middle block, right? These terms tell you the function of the technique. And you can look in many different textbooks, both Taekwondo and Karate, and see them used in exactly the way that the name describes. Now, where this gets into some trouble is if you rewind back far enough, you'll hit a point in time where there's no standardized name for these techniques. The standardized names for these techniques didn't come about until, I think it was Funakoshi's first book, Karate Do Kyohan, if I'm not mistaken, which had, for the first time, standardized names for these techniques. That wasn't a thing before. So, was it called a high block? Was it called something else? It's difficult to say. It would have changed from instructor to instructor. But then in the modern era, we got it in a book, and that's what it became in the modern sort of way of thinking. Now, this is to some extent speculation on my part, but I think it has some good sort of anecdotal points of interest. So, if you look at the world, especially the world pre-industrial revolution and the way that it functioned, there was a lot of symbolism used that had multiple layers of meaning and a lot of secret symbolism. In fact, I sort of randomly wandered into a Masonic temple the other day. Don't ask me why, right? I was just kind of looking around and I'm like, I'll go in there. They had a museum. And there was a lonely Freemason in there, and he, I don't know if he was lonely. No, he gave me a lot of interesting information, though. And one of the things he was talking about is that there were all these secret handshakes developed among Masons that sort of had their origin in the building guilds of the Middle Ages, in which the members of the guilds would shake hands in a certain way that only guild members knew. So if you received that handshake, you knew that that person had the knowledge, they had the goods, they were worthwhile to work on the project. A lot of times they couldn't read or write, so this was a way of communicating where you knew that they were worth their salt, right? So organizations had these sorts of secret elements and symbols that had multiple layers of meaning. So this is something you would see in Freemasonry. I am not a Freemason, by the way, just a point of interest to me. So you might see a symbol that on day one you're told means this. But as you move up the ranks of the secret society or mystery school, whatever you're talking about, the deeper layers of meaning get revealed to you. Now, I suspect, because it seems to me that a lot of the traditional martial arts kind of mirrored the approach of the mystery schools in the way they were taught, I believe that a lot of the techniques were probably taught in this way, in that the instructor would give a student a surface level meaning and then over time divulge more and more about what the technique could represent. Now, to a modern martial artist, I don't think there's anything special about this, in the sense that I don't think there's a secret technique that we're not aware of, that your forms have encoded into them, that you couldn't go learn somewhere at an MMA school or something like that, right? I think that pretty much all the techniques are available to the public on the internet or in books now. Even if you believe in something like what's the term? I'm blanking on the term for pressure point fighting in Japanese. I keep wanting to say shiatsu. That is not the term that I'm looking for. I'm looking for the term, and I think it starts with a K. Anyway, it's something that people like George Dillman, his instructor Oyata, I think that was one of his instructors, have sort of subscribed to, that the movements in the forms have these really intricate pressure point strikes encoded into them that teach you how to incapacitate someone with a touch. These things, by the way, exist in the old karate manual, like the Bubishi. So I think it was something believed. Now, if we assume that that is true, let's say that our poomsae have super secret pressure point fighting encoded into them at the highest level. even if that is true, that information is now openly available to everyone. So I don't think there's anything hidden in the forms that we don't have access to now. Was that the case many years ago? That's certainly a possibility. And so how you interpret it, I think, has multiple layers. That is, to some point, in some way, though, speculation. So good topics there. Now, I only have these 2 topics because I've just come back. I don't know if you guys are even going to see this. I might have lost my entire audience by disappearing for nearly 2 months. So if you're here, say hello. Get down in the comments and let me know that you're watching. And if you want to keep Topic Tuesday rolling forward again, then please leave me some additional comments so that we can continue Topic Tuesday. And until next time, you enjoy your training.